Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we proudly present this podcast to you in all its glory. They are the bearded wonders, the twin sons from different mothers. He is Blake, he is Sal, and together they are the Blake and Sal Show. And if you're not okay with that, I have two words for you. Stay tuned.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Blake and Sal Show, episode 212. I'm Blake, and technically we are off this week because I am actually traveling and I am in New Jersey right now getting ready for the GHS Hall of Fame induction ceremony tonight. But I did not want to not have a show this week, just because we're taking next week off because it's Mandy's birthday and I really didn't want to do a show next week. So we're taking next week off, but I got some big stuff planned in 2 weeks, so be prepared. But for now, I have two more interviews from the Clerks Minute side to share with you guys. This is just me interviewing a couple people. This is, first up, we got JJ Garvine, who is from the documentary Film Hawk, which is a very good documentary talking about Bob Hawke. And we talk about the documentary and Kevin Smith's relation to the documentary. And then right after, we have Chris Bain from Shooting Clerks. He plays Jay Mewes in the upcoming movie Shooting Clerks. So those interviews will be played right now. We'll be back in 2 weeks with, if everything goes as planned, a very cool, big-time interview. Have a good day, everybody.
Hey, this is Marilyn Gigliotti.
Hey, this is Brian O'Halloran.
Hey, everybody. My name is Scott Schiaffo, actor best known as the Chulies Gum Guy from the film Clerks.
And welcome to Clerks Minute.
You're listening to Clerks Minute.
And I'm not even supposed to be here today.
Hi, this is Mike Zapsik from AMC's Comic Book Man, the podcast I Sell Comics, and the Ming and Mike Show. And you're listening to Clerks Minute.
What's up, everybody? This is Ming Chen from AMC's Comic Book Man. You got a minute? Good, because you're listening to Clerks Minute.
Hey, this is Walt Flanagan, the Lon Chaney of the 90s, and you are listening to Clerks Minute.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Clerks Minute, the show where we break down the 1994 Kevin Smith classic, one Dante on the phone minute at a time. I'm Blake. Kyle is off today, but just because it's a very slow minute in the movie, it's really literally Dante on the phone talking to a newspaper. Instead of talking about the minute, I have a special guest on the line, and this man actually made is one of the directors of a documentary talking about Bob Hawke. And what's bringing him on is JJ Garvine. JJ, how you doing?
Hello.
How are you going today?
I'm doing great. Is the podcast only a minute, or is that?
You're not the only one to make that joke. I
wasn't sure.
No, it's fine. My main show, the Blake and Sal Show, my co-host over there keeps making fun of this format. So I remembered every single joke.
Yeah, it's creative. It's completely creative.
Yes, so we're actually part of a big community, so this is actually really, really cool. Part of everything. It's fun.
Well, that's outstanding. Thanks for having me on.
No problem whatsoever. So let's talk about this. You are one of the directors for Film Hawk. Am I correct?
That's correct. Yes, it was me and Ty Parquet directed the film. Daps Reiner was our DP. It was a very small group, and we followed Bob Hawke around New York City. And, of course, to tie into the purpose of your podcast, Bob was the first person to ever see Clerks. He went to a screening on October 3rd of 93. Was it 93 or 94? 93, I think.
94 is actually when
that's when it was released. So he saw it before everybody.
Then it must be 93.
Kevin had a special screening at the IFFM, the film market in New York City at the Angelica Theater. Only two people showed up besides Kevin's entourage, and one of those people was a guy named Bob Hawke. And Bob was going around looking for great films, new talent, and saw Clerks, loved it, and suggested it to the Sundance Film Festival.
That is really.
And the rest is history.
Well, why do a documentary on Bob Hawke anyway? For people that don't really know.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Why do the documentary on Bob Hawke? A lot of people don't really know him as someone is really important.
Well, that's
in the
what's
business.
interesting. That he has so many interesting stories. That he was there at the beginning of the beginning of independent film. And you're exactly right. Not too many people know his story, so that's why Ty and I thought it was very important. He did this for Kevin Smith. Kevin himself says, and Kevin's in the film, and he played a big part of everything about it. But other filmmakers like Eddie Burns, who launched Brothers McMullen and a whole series of things. He was there at the very beginning of Rob Epstein when he was doing the documentary The Times of Harvey Milk, which would go on to win the Academy Award, which is really the first gay Academy Award. He was there at the beginning of Kimberly Reed's career, who did a really, really interesting documentary called Prodigal Sons that was even featured on Oprah. And met Barbara Hammer, who was one of the first out lesbian filmmakers to just have such experimental, independent film work, and many other people, and including me and Ty. So that's why we just thought it was important. He's an older gentleman. The film starts with his 75th birthday. He's actually going to be 80 this April. And it was just a chance to look back at how important he was to other independent filmmakers. A few more were Scott McGeehee and David Siegel, who were just in the news. They're doing an all-female Lord of the Flies film, which is funny to see Scott's name trending on everything because his work doesn't usually hit the internet like that. But a film like Suture, which caught the eye of Steven Soderbergh, and films like What Maisie Knew. These guys were all of these people that I just named were all Sundance staples, and just very, very important people in the independent film world. And because we made this film about Bob, they all welcomed us in it. So then we actually premiered the film at the Sundance Film Festival, and we showed it at the Directors Guild of America in L.A., and Kevin was there for both of them and introduced the film.
Wow. That's actually really, really cool. It's actually, I was just thinking, it took you guys, it sounds like you said it started out at 75th. That means it took almost about 4 years to make this film?
Yeah, well, let's see. It was a little over 3, and it was sporadic filming. We don't live in New York City. We're based in Wilmington, Delaware.
Oh.
Bob is in New York, and everything that we filmed was New York. We actually did take a trip to Baltimore, Maryland, to the grave of Divine from the John Waters films, and it gave a chance to Bob to talk about early LGBTQ films, and we used Divine as kind of the springboard of that. So yeah, about 3 years. The point I was making, 3 years of sporadic filmmaking. So we would go into the city and hang out with Bob for a day, and then just kind of go away for a couple of months. And we would talk on the phone and email and such, and then we would go back. And a lot of the filmmakers, even though they were based in that area, like Kevin, and, Kevin's New Jersey, but, he lives out in L.A., so we had to wait for him to come. Rob Epstein, he's based out in San Francisco. We had to wait for him to come. Eddie Burns is in New York City, of course, but he had such a busy schedule. So it was basically just waiting around for people and then just deciding what day to go up to film Bob and just walk around, see what we could do.
Yeah, it's funny because...
And it's nice that it took so long.
It's funny because you're naming all these people, and you're naming all these really, really talented people, and it must have been really hard to get all the people together because that's a lot of talent to be involved in a documentary like this.
Talented people, and I know I sound like I'm name dropping.
That's fine.
But here's the funny thing: it wasn't difficult at all to get any of these people interested, and we reached out to Twitter on practically, I think, all of them with just a single tweet. We'd like to be involved in a Bob Hawke documentary. And they all said, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
It was basically just working around their schedule. But, I mean, Kevin's tweet, which I actually printed and saved, he just wrote, absolutely. And, it was that easy. And then once we had Kevin, I immediately reached out to Eddie Burns and said, hey, Kevin's doing this. You want to do it? And he said, of course. and and here's my email, and we just meet up at different places all throughout New York, with the exception of Kevin. We filmed in his store in New Jersey.
Of course you did. That's
right out.
Doesn't surprise me.
Kevin, and if we want to talk about him the most, since it's the point of your show, wonderful, wonderful guy. I will never say a negative word about him. Like I said, he tweeted absolutely that he'd be part of the film. We go to his store. It was the day after Thanksgiving of 2012.
Oh, my God. A Black Friday in a comic book
shut the store down.
What?
Yeah.
He closed the store down on Black Friday. Wow, that's crazy.
We get in there. There were a couple customers. He was chatting. He told, the store's all the comic book men, Walt and, all Bride, all those guys. They're really there. They're really hanging out. And he was like, yeah, close the store down. They turned out the lights in the front. A lot of people say the part in our film of Kevin looks the best, and it's because we used the lighting from AMC because they were shooting Comic Book Man. So we got to use their professional lights.
That's fantastic.
And just a super sweet guy. He actually did our Kickstarter video after we filmed with him, which we were there for hours. I mean, we just had the best time in this, little comic book store. And we was like, oh, we're going to do Kickstarter. Can you say something? He said, sure. He ended up doing the entire video. And then he stayed in touch all these years. When we got into Sundance, he was the first person that I reached out to, except for Bob. And he was doing Yoga Hosers, so he was going. And, he tweeted about us, how happy he was for us. And at the premiere, he comes out and introduces the film and really meant the world to us.
That's actually
and, we ran into him, I think 5 or 6 times throughout the week at Sundance. And, it was a lot of fun. Really, really good guy. And then when we showed in, what festival was it? Outfest. And we actually showed at the DGA in L.A. He came back out, introduced the film. Super, super nice guy. He wanted to come when we showed the following year at South by Southwest. Lionsgate put us up. They did this whole thing. We were their first original content on the TribecaShortlist.com. That's their streaming site. They licensed the film from us. And Kevin was going to be part of that, but because of scheduling, he couldn't. But, he's been a real trooper for the film. And, I can't say enough great things about him. And it all goes back down to Clerks.
Yeah, it all comes right back to
Minute.
where we are here. Yeah, where we are right now, talking about a movie that came out in 1994 and kind of changed everything for all of us. Out of curiosity, I always ask this of our guests, what's your history with Clerks itself, the movie?
Sure. Well, just as a fan, I've loved independent films. I was younger, obviously, at that time, and I was working at a movie theater, and I saw the preview of Clerks, to Pulp Fiction, and I saw that it was black and white and grainy, and I said, oh, my God, I have to see that. And I saw it in the theater. I had to drive to Philadelphia because it didn't play around here, as smaller films like that wouldn't, or still don't. And I drove to Philadelphia. I took a date. She wasn't too sure about the film. That's my wife, so I won't say anything negative that long ago. I was blown away, and it's funny because the theater was packed. And I remember just thinking, oh, my God, that's amazing. And, just been a Kevin Smith fan all those years. Then I would meet Bob Hawke, unrelated. He became a creative consultant on a documentary that Ty and I did called Keeping the Peace. I met him through Scott McGeehee, who I talked about earlier, who did Suture and What Mazing Knew and several others, B Season. And when I heard Bob Hawke, I thought, wait a minute, he's in the Clerks documentary. And, talked to Bob, and, he would talk about Kevin a little bit. I didn't want to, have oh, but what's he like? And, you talk about him from time to time, and, a lot of different filmmakers. And then when we decided to do this, we said, hey, what if we reached out to other filmmakers? And what if we start with Kevin? And he was like, yeah, sure. And then Kevin just really embraced us from there. I mean, that's the kind of guy he is. He became famous, and he never forgot that it was Bob Hawke